huge amount going on in higher education, including higher education policy at the moment. So we're not short of things to write about. And we've recently published a report on student accommodation. There's some really big issues in student accommodation, the cost of living for students, whether whether student accommodation is designed well enough for students to really be integrated with other students. And then there was, of course, this awful recent fire in a student accommodation block in Bolton. So that's a very topical issue. And we'll go on, we'll be going on looking at that. We've also recently written a report on the BME attainment gap, the gap in achievement between white students and students of other ethnicities. It's a really difficult issue, this, because actually BME students do really well on access to university, and then they seem to fall behind afterwards. Lots of different things going on. I mean, BME is a huge category, and there's lots of different ethnicities within that, and they perform differently. And some universities are struggling to really find the underlying reasons, but we need to go on doing so and having difficult conversations within universities about why some of our students who arrive as really good prospects then fall behind other students. We've been writing about mental health issues among students for a number of years, and I'm pleased to say that lots of other people are now interested in that issue and have picked it up, and they need to, because there is a mental health crisis among young people today. But we don't talk enough about the pressures on staff as well, and as people want the student experience to get better and better and better, but are not always willing to pay more for that, individual members of staff can find there's even greater pressures on them than in the past. It's never been easy being an academic anyway, and the pressures on them are even greater than in the past. So we did some work looking at how much staff are accessing counselling and occupational health services, and there's been a real explosion in the numbers. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It may be the staff are better at asking for support. And maybe the universities are better at giving access to that support. But it's an issue we need to talk a lot more about. My experience working in Whitehall a few years ago led me to believe that there are some bits of Whitehall that get the diversity of our education system. Principally those bits of Whitehall that work with schools, further education colleges, universities, day in, day out. They understand that the strength of our education system is in its breadth and its diversity. So why do we keep being subject to policies that cause problems for education institutions? And I think the answer is most of Whitehall doesn't deal with educational institutions day in, day out, and doesn't therefore really understand them. And the Home Office is a good example of this. Many policies out of the Home Office have been really problematic for international students and made the UK look much less welcoming than we should be to students from other countries. And we need to crack this. We need much better joined up government like they have in other countries when we're discussing issues like international students. I am an optimist about our education system for lots of reasons. One is that it's fantastic already. So we're starting from a position of strength. Another is that aspiration levels are running very high. More people want to go to higher education than in the past. Thirdly, I actually think our institutions are pretty well managed and governed and have dedicated staff. Yes, there are problems, but that is a really good starting point. There are some big challenges. I'm talking to you as a general election is going on. Brexit has yet to be resolved. So there are some really big challenges, but it's very hard to dampen down people's aspirations to better themselves through learning, and so it should be. And also the future economic growth of our country is also going to depend on high levels of skills. And employers need high levels of skills. So it's almost whichever way you look at it from, there are grounds for optimism, but there are challenges too. We've been polling students since 2006 on a range of issues. And the question we ask every year that perhaps gets the most interest is when we ask students, do you think you're getting value for money? And ever since the higher fees came in England, those numbers have got worse and worse. Until a couple of years ago. And a couple of years ago, the number of students who say they think they're getting good value for money has been going up again. And I think that's probably because universities are doing a better job at explaining to students where their fees go. And frankly, they're probably doing a better job at teaching and learning their students too. And, you know, managing a big university is a really big job. So, you know, heads of faculties, pro-vice chancellors, vice chancellors, you know, people in innovation teams inside universities, they should be paid a fit and going rate for the job. And, you know, that will be, in some instances, you know, really significant sums of money. But we're not always very good at explaining why people are being paid the amounts they are, you know, and we need to get much better at that. I don't think we're always very good as a sector at benchmarking ourselves against other sectors and explaining why, if someone in another sector is getting this amount of money, it's right for a vice chancellor or another senior figure to be getting, you know, a similar or different amount of money. So I think there's a communication challenge, and also there's a governance challenge. You know, has every vice chancellor been paid exactly the right amount for the job? No, probably not. Some probably have been paid too much. And there's a challenge for governors, remuneration committees, chairs of governors, to make sure, particularly on new appointments, that the procedures and processes are in place to make sure the basic pay is right, and the procedures for changing that basic pay in future are right and transparent.